The NBA offseason always brings with it plenty of rumors. It's my favorite time of the year. It's so exciting to think about what all the possibilities could be for each of these teams around the league. However, today, I'm going to tell you about some rumors that you absolutely 100% should not believe. And the first one is, I think, in contention for the most ridiculous offseason rumor that we've gotten in years, maybe ever. There were rumors flying around about this idea that Kyrie Irving was trying to recruit LeBron James to Dallas. He was trying to get him to be a Dallas Maverick, to request a trade away from the Lakers, a team that was relatively close to making the finals, arguably, to get him away from that team and come and join him in Dallas. Now, the Kyrie-LeBron connection is not something that is super crazy, and I do think that eventually Kyrie will probably end up on the Lakers. But this idea that LeBron is going to ask out of the Lakers, you can say what you want about LeBron in terms of player movement, changing teams all the time, forming super teams. He's never requested a trade before. So that would be one part of this story. But the other part would be, how exactly does Kyrie, who probably didn't think this far ahead, how does he expect Dallas to make this move, to trade for LeBron? They don't have assets to even trade for a regular all-star caliber player, much less LeBron James, unless he's insinuating that they are supposed to be trading Luka in exchange for LeBron, which is the only scenario in which the Lakers would actually consider this. I don't think I really needed to tell y'all that that was a rumor that you shouldn't believe, not only logistically because it wouldn't work, but just because it doesn't make any sense. But I didn't feel like I could make this video and not mention that one first. Next up revolves around the Phoenix Suns, a team that we've already gotten a lot of rumors about, whether it be what's going to happen with Chris Paul, whether it's going to be, the Kyrie Irving possibilities with them as well, trying to get Kyrie to rejoin with Kevin Durant. But the bigger one I want to talk about today that I don't think there's almost any likelihood of happening is the Suns acquiring Damian Lillard. Now, there's a couple of different reasons for that. I do think that if Portland went in the direction of looking to trade Dame, if he wanted to leave Portland, I think that Phoenix is an interesting scenario for him, obviously in place of Chris Paul alongside KD, alongside Devin Booker. Generally speaking, it's similar, again, to something I've referenced in the past. We've got KD, you've got Booker, and then another guard. It's kind of like when the Nets had their big three together with Kyrie, KD, and of course James Harden, and how successful those guys were when they played together. And so I can understand that. But the reason why this doesn't work is it's just an asset issue for Phoenix. They don't have the stuff necessary to trade for Damian Lillard. On paper, maybe you could say that you could send DeAndre Ayton either directly to Portland or elsewhere, reroute some other picks and some young players to Portland, and maybe that's enough. But I think if Dame was to become available and Portland did shop him around, there's a handful of teams around the league that Dame would like to go to, I would assume, that just have better assets than Phoenix. So even if Phoenix stood up and said, hey, we want to get this guy, they don't have picks to trade, and really the only, I guess, quote unquote, young asset player they have on the roster is DeAndre Ayton, and I don't think his stock is particularly high, at least on the level of bringing in someone like Damian Lillard, who of course Portland is going to expect a lot for in return. I think a team like Miami, a couple of other destinations, not only could potentially represent a better opportunity to Phoenix, to Lillard in comparison to Phoenix, that's debatable, but what isn't is that Phoenix just doesn't have as many assets as some of those other teams, and so I think they could explore it, they could try and make it work, but from an asset perspective, I don't think Phoenix has enough to get Dame. Next up, let's talk about Bradley Beal, and of course we've got all these rumors going around about Washington potentially trading him away, but I'm also seeing a lot of stuff where people are saying that these rumors aren't necessarily true and that they're just trying to leverage the situation, and that because of the no trade clause, it's going to be difficult to move Bradley Beal. And there's all these rumors saying that actually this isn't going to happen. Well, once again, as is the theme of this video, I just don't think that's true. And we finally have some real concrete reporting on the fact that Washington not only wants to get rid of Bradley Beal, but wants to work with him on finding a new destination. And there are so many teams around the league that would like to bring in Beal, one, because he's talented, but two, because of some stuff that we've mentioned in other videos. It's not going to require as much as it normally would to bring in a player the talent level Bradley Beal because of the no trade clause, as well as because of his contract overall. So I definitely think that those reports and those rumors are wrong. Like, Beal is going to get moved, in my opinion, this offseason. It's finally going to happen, and it's going to be for less than you might think. A Tyler Hero and a pick with some contracts kind of structure makes sense to me. There's a couple of other teams around the league, of course, we've already talked about in previous videos, like New York, like the Lakers. Those are things that I certainly would put stock in and believe. But if you see stuff come out about this situation that implies that they're going to run it back one more time and we're going to do the Bradley Beal thing, once again, there's been too many changes in Washington in terms of in the front office and guys that make these kinds of decisions, for them to just look at this roster and really think that that's the correct path moving forward. They need to get some assets. They need to move on from this situation. They should have done it years ago, but I really think that now's the time to take advantage. Now, look, it is still the Wizards. They certainly still could keep Bradley Beal and maybe even keep him up to the trade deadline and try and do some other things, but I really feel like the time is now. Last up is Karl Anthony Towns. Now, this one I'm least confident about. All the other things I've talked about in this video, I feel pretty confident that, I feel very confident that LeBron is not going to be a Dallas Maverick. But when it comes to like Damon Phoenix or Beal trade rumors, like that kind of stuff, I'm like 90+% confident that I'm right about that. I would put the Cat stuff in like a 70 to 75% range if like I don't think he's going to get traded for some reasons that we're going to talk about. But there are some scenarios in which maybe Minnesota does consider this. Now, looking at the Timberwolves situation, given the Gobert trade from last offseason, you would think, okay, maybe they do want to shuffle the roster around a little bit, right? Maybe you do want to trade away Karl Anthony Towns, focus on Anthony Edwards, and then of course you have Rudy Gobert as the role man. You've got McDaniels on the wing. You'll figure it out later, right? But you want to try and make Anthony Edwards the focal point of the team. I think clearly the trade deadline, getting rid of D'Angelo Russell, part of that was to make Anthony Edwards even that much more of a focal point of the team. I think all that makes sense. But regardless of what you or I think the Minnesota Timberwolves should do with Karl Anthony Towns, I kind of would lead more towards that they should trade him. In terms of where their mindset is at right now, I don't think that they're going to actually go forward with a Cat trade this offseason for one giant reason. And that is, as much of, a lack of success that they had last season after making this big Gobert trade, something that they thought was going to elevate their team to potentially championship contending status, they never really got a chance to see this full roster together. Certainly once McDaniel started playing much better, Cat was hurt for most of the year, and they never really had an opportunity to see what those four guys look like together. Edwards, McDaniels, Cat, and Gobert. And yes, initially we did see some struggles between Cat and Gobert fitting in the front court, and I think logistically there are obviously some concerns there. But when you're Minnesota and you make this kind of a big move, there's not really enough of a sample size to kind of jump ship on that already. At least that's what it seems like to me. I'm not saying that I wouldn't explore trading Karl Anthony Towns, because at this point you're stuck with Gobert. You're not going to get good value there, but maybe you can restore some of your assets and or build a roster that works well around Edwards and clear up some of that front court issues that we talked about, especially defensively between Cat and Gobert. But besides from that point, I just don't see a scenario where Minnesota looks at their roster, looks at how they performed last year as well as the year before, and thinks that the handful of games that they got with their full team together is enough of a sample size to evaluate the situation and come to the conclusion that it's time for a Karl Anthony Towns trade. I think I personally could get there. I think a lot of you guys watching this video could get there and say that it is time to trade Cat, but we're talking about what I think Minnesota will or won't do. And regardless of a lot of Karl Anthony Towns rumors that are out there right now, I don't think they're ready to make this move quite yet. And the reason all this is important is that this time of year specifically, there's so much information and misinformation out there. And I remind people all the time, there's agendas behind every single leak, every single rumor that you see. And it doesn't mean that it's true. It doesn't mean that it's false, but it does mean that there was a reason for it. These insiders, these teams, they don't get or give this information for no reason. They don't give it away so that fans are really interested in what's happening around the league. Teams are leaking information in a strategic way to position themselves well in the offseason to make a good trade and force another team to make a bad deal, maybe, outmaneuver a different team. There's reasons behind these leaks. And so it's important to point out the ones that, in my opinion, have almost a 0% chance of happening.